Welcome to Project Fast Fish here on Mike's Motorworks, and today we start a very monumental task on Project Fast Fish. And what we're doing is we are getting ready to put in our brand new under seat floor pan. And this is very, very huge for the project. And I'll tell you why in just a moment and show you how I'm going to do it. It all happens right now here on Mike's Motorworks and Project Fast Fish. This rear underseat floor pan is very, very important to the structure of this Barracuda, this E-body here. And the reason being is this E-body is a unibody vehicle as opposed to body on frame. Now, for those who aren't familiar with what the differences are, okay, body on frame means that you have a separate body that's constructed and a separate frame that's constructed, and the two are bolted together. A unibody means everything is welded together. The frame is the body and the body is on the frame, or is the frame, if you will, okay? As you can see here, there is no middle section. That white is just my little jig I made to kind of keep everything in place, right? So there is no middle section. Effectively, what looks like a frame or would be a frame comes out to this cross member, and then the weight is and the support is distributed to the outer rocker panels, okay, and then back to the inner clip or frame again, and then sent back out. So there's a lack of middle framing in here, okay? Now, this middle section here, this underseat section is very, very vital because it does and serves two purposes. Purpose number one, all right, it helps provide cross supporting for the back frame itself and the associated structure, and it helps provide the foundation for the wheel wells. And these wheel wells are very, very important for structure because they act as supports for the back structure and the roof structure itself. So you can see that things are very, very vital here. In fact, when they make these vehicles on the assembly line, let me rephrase that. When they made these vehicles on the assembly line, they started off with the basic front clip here, the cross member, the front clip piece over there, right? And this piece is right here, right? And after they were set on their jigs, they were sent down the assembly line, at which point, okay, some of the parts in the front were added on to provide that support, okay? And this back piece was added on before the wheel wells, before the roof, before anything else, all right, because it's the foundation of the vehicle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at and make sure that, one, we can get the thing off, okay, and it's pretty easy to do. If you've done anything like this before, it's pretty simple. But if you haven't done anything before, I'm going to leave a link above, okay, to show you the best way to remove panels on another video I made. And you'll see me kind of do this in fast motion here, but I'll leave that link up for you so you can see how to remove the body panels effectively, because I'm going to do everything in fast motion here. And then we'll go from there. But first, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and compare what is on the old panel with what is on the new panel to make sure that everything that I need is on there. Here we go. All right, so a couple of key things to remember that we need. This is the lock or the catch for the under seat or for that rear seat right there. And we have what I believe is a seat belt bracing, okay, so the hot tying with the seat belts and such. Some other supporting structures back there. Over to the side here, there's nothing really, really important besides this little clip right here. Again, I think that has to do with seatbelt and seating itself, where the panel goes for the side and what have you. This panel will need to come off here. This is a little support or brace for this side panel here, okay? And of course, everything is kind of welded underneath here. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Now, there is some built-up seam sealer. I'll have to get rid of that, okay? So that'll have to be ground away eventually. Probably do that here, one of my first steps after I move these parts, okay? And then, of course, back here, these sports, right, kind of keep everything from shifting, you know, around at the top, if you will, right? So these will need to come off, okay? But, let's see, those are there. The clips are there. Let's take a look at the underside to see what we'll need. I'm going to poke my head through the wheel well here, so bear with me. Oh, there we go. All right, so back here, I note a couple of different things. One, looks like where there once was a muffler or muffler supports back here, maybe muffler supports, some sort of support back there, and of course some reinforcement back here. All right, so I'll have to keep that in mind as I'm going around things. Now I got the support here for the main frame here on this side. Ooh, I'll have to be really careful of that. See how it's different here? Okay, so I'll have to keep that in mind right there. That's huge, all right? So I don't want to cut into that. And you can kind of see here, I was telling you about where the two pieces kind of get pinch welded together, okay? So it might be effective to just kind of cut just above that. I might do that with my plasma cutter. There's not a lot in my way here, even this rubber stuff I can get around with the saw or what have you. So I might have a solution with that with the plasma cutter. And I'll be using various tools, of course, during the process. Now I will have to be mindful of this piece right here, okay? And this piece back here. This is actually where the leaf shackles go, so I'll have to be really mindful of that. I don't want to cut into that too deep up in that area, so I'll have to be really, really cautious in that area. Alrighty, so looking underneath here, let's get on the ground and look, because sometimes you just got to get on the ground and do it, okay? All right, underneath here, you can see here that this structure kind of bleeds out over here, so I'll have to be mindful of that. And then, of course, comes off and around there. And, of course, looking at this right here. So just as long as I'm careful of this and this, I should be good. All right, so when I get the plasma cutter, I'm probably not going to go too crazy up in here. In fact, I probably might even just break out the Sawzall, or not Sawzall, the air saw or grinder to make quick work of these and to kind of call it there, right? And of course, I'll have to smooth everything up there. Don't mind that. I was doing some work the other day. This has got to come off in a few minutes. I'm going to drill those out later and what have you. That's a story for another day. And I also got a repair to do up here later on, but that's a story for another day. Let's focus on this right here. All right, but other than that, I think we're good. Now let's go take a look at the new piece that's coming in. Sure enough, on our new piece, there are those bracket, or what I think is the safety belt structure. The safety belts might go under there, but whatever. So you got some braces and brackets there. There are our seat brackets, so I don't have to worry about salvaging those, okay? Everything is kind of set into place. I got a little ding over there I got to work out. That's fine with the hammer. That's easy. Same thing over here. The corner got crushed, looks like during shipping. Looking on the back of this thing, sure enough, there is that support structure for what I'm assuming is where the seat belt lap belts go, right? And then, of course, everything else looks good under here. Things look like kind of line everything that we had, even down to the individual little ridges here where they add that for supporting structure or what have you. Now, in the back, what I did notice is I didn't have that muffler support. And I'm assuming they left that off because they knew, hey, guys are going to be doing different things, right? Now, on this particular car, the 318, the 73 model, only had a 2-barrel in it, and it had a single exhaust. So it had a dual exhaust off the V8, went to a white pipe, and went straight out the back, right? That's not going to work for what we have planned for the engine that's going in here. In fact, I highly recommend that you go out and check that video. I'm going to leave a link up for it right now to see how much power we're actually making for this vehicle. And that had me rethinking a couple of different things about how I want to provide some bracing and structuring and so on and so forth, right? So back to the project at hand. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put this camera up, get all my tools out that I need, right? And then I want to put it in time lapse. What I'm going to do after that is I'm going to start cutting away at this old panel, okay, getting that out of there. And then what I'm going to do is after that panel is out, everything is cleaned up, everything is brushed off. I got a lot of de-rusting and such to do. I'm going to go ahead and measure up my new panel, put that into place, maybe set a couple of sheet metal screws to kind of get it set in there, right? Draw my lines, get that panel prepped by going ahead and put some drilling in for the plug welds, do some paint prep, so on and so forth for where I say paint prep. It's basically you're just going through and getting down to raw metal so you can have good welds, right? And adding some weld through primer because we're MIG welding here, right? And then go ahead and get the back area prep ready for that because I'll never see under here again. And I want to go ahead and get that all taken care of and brushed out and just basically get that sealed up, ready for this pan to go back up in there, and then get that welded in place, and boom, we're done. I make it sound easy, but it's quite a task. Here is how things are looking after everything is yanked out here. And you can kind of see the basic philosophy of how things went. Starting with the, we'll just do one side here because, you know, how I did the other side is as a mirror to it. So as you can see right there, just found the spot welds and drilled those out. And that was pretty easy. They all came out pretty simply there. And of course, I'm going to leave that in place, all right, so that when I put it back, you know, everything will just spot weld in with some sheet screws, and I'll go ahead and plug weld those, so pretty easy. Now, when it came time for over here, and I'm sorry for my tools being in the way here, but yeah, this was a pretty simple process. I'm fixing to use those here in just a few minutes, kind of do some descaling, if you will. So the process here was pretty simple. You saw me on the fast motion there, or on the motion capture, the time lapse, if you will, how things were kind of easy up here. Then as I got up into there, it required a little bit of extra effort. All right, went ahead and just did a quick drill on all these welds here. Some of those didn't get down as far as I would have liked, but oh well, I got the grinder, so that'll take care of that. So this was taken care of here. Now what I did was I went ahead and used a plasma cutter and cut over, and I'm sorry, that's kind of light to see there. There it goes. Kind of cut the wheel well here. See where it kind of has that rough line, right? I'm not saving these wheel wells, so I was okay with going ahead and cutting them. Now, if you are someone who is saving theirs, you would want to go through and find all the spot welds and drill those out before taking this part out itself, all right? Then I cut a line right in the center between the frame and the wheel well, and then kind of worked that around and pulled that out, then cut down the center between the frame rail here, okay? Allow me just to work the one side, then the other, and boom, they all came out relatively simply. Now, the biggest bugger was getting the ones behind the wheel wells, because what happens is in this wheel well, okay, that panel, and you can see the panel, I got it right here, right? This lip right here kind of goes at the end right here, okay? And ideally, that should be plug welded in, all right? Mine were not on this side, they were on the other side. That might have been a slight difference in manufacturing, right? And it basically required some cutting and trimming here. Now this will go off and I'll fix all that mess and what have you. But right now I have it in its place where the welds can go in. Now, if I need to do some cutting to get that fit in right, I will. I have no problem doing that, okay? I'll do whatever it takes to get those pieces and those panels and those parts in there. And I also took a measurement from effectively what is this side right here where the panel ends into here, alrighty? And I took a measurement doing the same thing down here to where the panel was over here, where those pieces kind of met together, right? And so I made a note of what those were. I measured both sides, and both sides were exactly the same, and I'm going to use that as a reference. So let's go ahead and get to descaling, and I'll probably go ahead and take care of all this mess off camera using a propane torch and a scraper. Wow, stayed up for a little while last night working on the vehicle, and got dark, and after it got dark, I didn't have enough light from the front of the vehicle to get what I needed done, so I wrapped things up. Now, where do things stand? Well, I went ahead and took care of descaling a lot of that rust, and then I treated the portions with my Osvo. For those that have been watching the channel know that I use Osvo and rust neutralization a lot. It is pretty effective, but it does take some work. You can't just spray it on and expect it to work. You got to descale it, spray it on, work it in, and boom, there you go. And those rust spots over there are just for where I just did some brief knocking and what have you. And in a few moments, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this primer, this zinc phosphor, or this zinc primer right here, this weld through primer, time to dry out. I'm going to tape it and then go ahead and run Eastwood's internal frame coat up in there, because I'm never going to see these again, right? And I want to make sure that they are protected, right? And I want to do what kind of prevention I can. Obviously, I went ahead and descaled it and hit with the wire brush and the wire wheel as much as I could in there, the wire cut brush and the little 1-inch wire brush, and just kind of worked the Osvo in, and then that Eastwood internal frame coat should be sufficient for keeping that rust down at bay. Also work these areas, etc. Now this morning when I woke up, the first thing I did was went ahead and test fit the panel to see how things fit. And I'll be honest with you, things were almost nearly perfect. And I say almost nearly because there'll be some gentle massaging I have to do to kind of work the panel into place as far as working the panel down and what have you, but it turned out to be pretty good. Now there was one small mistake that I found, and that mistake can be found right here. This hole right here was a little off, and I guess it was off from the manufacturer on the vehicle itself, right? And so the hole you can see was initially right here, but the bolt hole itself sat down in this area, so it was a little off. So I went ahead and ground off the metal down here, and then that should leave plenty of room for it, right? Now, when it was in place, I went ahead and used my previous markings to make sure that we were set and we were ready to go, and we were. And then in a few minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the panel around, all right? In fact, let me go ahead and do that right now, and I'm gonna show you what I have marked and what I'm going to mark as far as getting my plug holes ready to go. Alrighty, so while it was staged into place and test fitted into place, went ahead and took my paint marker and marked where the rails and the lines go, right? And you know, instead of measuring, this gives you a template to use as far as drilling your holes and such are concerned, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and take my marker, right? And where's my marker at? I'll just use a pointer, right? And what I'm gonna do in a minute is I'm gonna go and measure how far the average plug weld is within the frame rail itself. Then I'm gonna use a measuring tool to measure out how far that is. And then every 2 inches or so, just 2 inches to be sufficient, I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole to make sure that I am within those spots for those welds, right? And I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, right? Now, when it comes to these over here, right, this is my rough area, so I can drill anywhere I need to in here to get my plug weld set in place, all right? Pretty simple. Additionally, these rails right here, okay, this is where the front goes right against the wheel well itself, so the front of the wheel well, if you will. I'm going to bend that back into place. But these will also get plug welded in. I'm just going to take my, I got a little punch hole. I'm going to take my hole punch and just do 3 holes. Super simple. And when I get it in there, I'm going to bang that back into place and straighten that out. And then these guys right here, I'm not going to touch this outside of just bending it a little bit, probably about 90 degrees out, okay? And I want to bend it 90 degrees out because I want to make sure that it sits flat and flush against the wheel well when I put the wheel well in there, right? And I'm going to leave this untouched, okay? So I'm not gonna mess with this right now because when I put the wheel well in there, I'm gonna measure out the wheel well, drill the holes, right? And then that will be my guide where I can put my wheel well against and make my plug welds on the wheel well. So I don't want to press and hole punch this area because my wheel well will sit up in there and I need something to attach to, right? So this shouldn't take me too much time to do. Additionally, from the factory, there were no spot welds around the little part that comes out on this side, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and do one here and up top there just for additional reinforcement purposes, along with the ones that run across this main frame and that main rail there. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead and show that in fact, it's probably already playing in the background, but I'm gonna go ahead and capture that in a time lapse and then go ahead and get some other stuff ready for its final set, and I can go ahead and show you what I'm gonna do to work and weld this panel into place. So check it out. Since this is the last time that someone will see in between the frame rails here, I figured I'd show off what happened here. And effectively what I did is I used some weld through primer, which is high concentrate of zinc. We're going to be MIG welding here. We're not going to be doing anything else, so this should be sufficient in this area. Then inside, I used Eastwood's internal frame coat. Now, I didn't use the specialized nozzle that comes with it. I just used the standard nozzle to kind of spray in there and what have you. And of course, the other side got the same treatment. Then on the outside here, I did not use the internal frame coat. I used, of course, we had already neutralized the rust with the Osvo. So I just went ahead and epoxy primered that with the single stage epoxy, 2K epoxy primer from Eastwood. I'll leave the description below, and did the same thing over in this area. And of course, the inside rails received the same. Now the outside rails I didn't do yet. It's gonna be easier for me to work on those once I get the wheel wells out. So I'll go ahead and take care of that with the wire wheel and the grinder. And once I get those wheels out, and go ahead and get those set and neutralized and primed and etc., right? But this should be enough to get me going. Now the devil's in the details, right? So I went ahead, and of course the braces that are here on the back side, let me show you. On the back side, you can see it between the metal. I'll go ahead and point it out with my little arrow dealy. I went ahead and it was really simple. Just simply went ahead and knocked off the loose rust with some sandpaper and a wire handheld brush, like a toothbrush, you know, that kind of thing. And once the rust was knocked off, went ahead and sprayed the Osvo to neutralize the rust, and then went ahead and sprayed it with the weld through primer to kind of help keep the rust down. I didn't want to use anything else back there. I could have used the Eastwood internal frame coat, but because I'm welding and such, I went ahead and went with the higher zinc primer, and that'll fit right up against the backside of the underseat panel. So with all of that in mind, all right, I'm going to let things dry out, and in probably about 2 hours or so, I'm going to come back, set the pan in place for the final time, make sure everything is good, make sure everything is lined up, and going to go ahead and start welding that into place. And I'm going to explain more about that as soon as I get it in. Not bad for my first attempt at a rear seat floor pan. And the idea here was just to get everything into place and welded down. Some of my rosette welds turned out pretty nice. Some of them need a little bit of love, but I'm going to go ahead and grind those. Now, there is a debate about leaving them if they're in good shape and not more than a certain size and grinding them off. Personally, I like to grind them off. Why? Just because I am going to add some texturing in here with the lizard skin, as I mentioned on another episode of Project Fast Fish. But pretty much overall, just grind these down and I'll be in good shape. And the other side looks even better because I was able to make some adjustments. Took my time up there, and then as I got down here, I got a little bit faster and got a little impatient and what have you, and that's my bad. But even over here, everything is nice and flush as it should be. Now, I haven't put those on just yet, and this guy is off just a hair. And the reason that guy is off was when Pop was driving the vehicle, there was a minor fender bender, and that fender bender may have caused this side of the car to kind of lean over a little bit and cause that to kind of squinch in there. And it's always had that bow in there. Well, when I tried to pull back the bow to that spot there, everything is aligned, everything is where it should be, okay? It probably even more so than it was from the factory, okay? That didn't line up just right. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that off camera. More than likely use a tie down strap onto something secure to pull that back into shape, okay? And kind of get that into place, and then go ahead and fill those plug welds. I probably will leave those plug welds with the rosettes there because it's very difficult to get in there and grind in there without the special tools. And even then, I think it'd be hard pressed to kind of get everything in place there. So overall, really, really satisfied. So what is next for Project Fast Fish? Well, the next step is a big one, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and take on the wheel wells. Now that wheel well will require a lot of structure to be redone or moved, or at least temporarily sheet metal screwed into place, okay? In fact, when I'm messing with that, I'm gonna start getting into this structure area here, which is, very, very vital part of the car, right? So I'm gonna do a couple things and do a little bit more research to see exactly how I'm gonna do it, and then go from there. And of course, once those are out, I'll be able to get these trunk pans out, get the light panel out, so on and so forth, get this back area cleaned up, and getting ready for the final stages. Ideally, okay, by the time all is said and done, working towards the overall shell, I haven't got the rear quarters yet. Okay, that's a big thing. I need the rear quarters, I need the roof skin, and I need to get that tail panel and the not trunk panel extensions, the gutters and the sail panel. Ideally, once everything is set with the trunk, the wheel wells, and the roof structure for the parts that I have, I should be able to get those parts on there, and then boom, the shell is done, and I could shift my attention towards getting the suspension back on there and getting everything into place for final body work. And I have a guy in mind that might be able to help me out with that down in Orlando. So we'll check back in with you. There goes my compressor. But the next thing is going ahead and looking at wheel wells and wheel well replacement. That's next on Project Fast Fish.